Are you ready to learn from an incredible woman entrepreneur who really started from scratch into now a multi-awarded AV production and event agency owner? This is the Skill You podcast, where every single episode we are diving into the stories of amazing human beings of how they've been able to start, build, and scale themselves beyond where they were when they started. I am your host, Lacaba. I'm the co-founder of 2XU. And if you're ready to ditch the grind, let's go over and scale you. Now, our guest today is an award-winning global AI speaker, AV production executive, and agency owner with over 2 decades of experience delivering live, hybrid, and virtual events worldwide. She is the founder and CEO of Trifan Events Productions, a woman-owned AV production and event technology agency, and the producer and host of Events Demystified, the top 5 podcasts in event production, event technology, and AI. So guys, please help me welcome our guest today, Anca. Hey, Anca.
Leanne, how are you doing today?
Good. Super excited for this. I know when my assistant reached out to you on basically getting you on the podcast, I was like, oh, okay, this will be a very interesting conversation. So that's why I just wanted to kind of dive into how we're going to structure today's podcast. So to start off, I always love getting to know the person before the business because it's always the most interesting part of the story. So who was Anca before this? Like, what was kind of that journey like before you got to where you are now?
Well, depends how much time you have, but I'm actually... I've been in this business for 20 something years, so I feel like most of my adult life has been spent in audiovisual production and technology, and now AI. Prior to that, because I'm also an immigrant, I moved from Romania to US when I was 21, right after college. And I worked in radio, actually as a radio host throughout my high school and college. And that's sort of like the place where my love for audiovisual, which is a not very common love and passion for females to just fall into, that's where it was born. I loved the interaction with the audience. I definitely loved this microphone and having a voice, right? But I think more than anything, it was interesting because what caught my attention was the technical behind the scenes. How do things work, and what happens if they don't work? How do you troubleshoot when it happens? And I wanted to get more training on that. And back in Romania at the time, there was no opportunities for women in that field. I remember being, going to this production business owner in my local town and asking if I could just shadow his team. And he literally laughed in my face and is like, why don't you go and get married or do something else like women do around here, right? And to me, that was unacceptable. I knew right off the bat that I was not going to follow the norms of my culture. I wasn't just going to get married. I wasn't going to do that. So I worked enough throughout high school and college to make enough money to get to buy a one-way ticket to US. US has always sort of been to me this place where there's a lot of freedom, there's a lot of agency, and there's a lot of opportunities. So I figured, well, I'll find those opportunities for myself. So that's what I did. I got on a plane, I moved to US, and I really worked my way up from the ground up, like bootstrapping. Eventually, I went to school for audiovisual as a sound engineer, as a video producer, a lighting designer, and then I worked in many shows, like high stake shows, especially in LA, where you work with celebrities, with A-liners, with fashion designers. A lot of that really is the building blocks of my training and my career. And there's also, the flip side of that is it's also a hard place for women to work in. It's very physical. It's very long hours. We're working, back to back shows, and you would be on a show for 18 hours and then you go back and reload the next show, load it all up and go into the next one. And eventually I burned out. Like, I think it was like 7 years of doing this nonstop with very little time off. Like, you would work 7 days a week, like I'm also guilty of being a workaholic, right? So it's not like somebody forced me to. I actually really
You love what you
enjoy
do.
working. I really exactly. So, but I did burn out. Like I remember we were doing a show for Cristiano De Gea. He's the Ed Hardy fashion designer, and rest in peace because he's no longer with us. But he had a lot of big fashion shows at the time, and we were doing one in Las Vegas at the convention center, and we had this non-stop work days of like about 3 days in a row to load in and set up the entire conference space. Think about like a CES, like of that magnitude, right? And
Wow.
and we had some troubleshooting to do because we involved the local labor and they didn't do a great job. So all of that led to this like crash of my entire body. Like I crashed on the convention floor, and I remember my mind telling my body to move, to get up, and I couldn't. I was like so depleted. We were working nonstop for like, I don't know, like, it was like 24 hours, like just no sleep, and just grabbing, you know, here and there a snack whenever we could, because we were really, really tight on the schedule. And that's kind of like, it was for me a bit of a come to Jesus moment to reassess, like if I ever wanted to build a family, if I ever wanted to have some balance in my life, this is not sustainable. Like I have to change things about it, right? So I moved out of LA. Actually, I moved to Portland, Oregon. I moved into a different part of the industry, which is the corporate events part of the industry. And one thing led to another. That's when I actually decided to start my own agency. And then eventually start a family, have kids. I have 2 kids, and then also we moved again when my husband got another opportunity for work, and then I've been here locally in Boise, actually Idaho, for almost 10 years now, and I travel a lot. I go to events all the time. Like just last night at midnight, right before we were recording this, I came from Salt Lake City. The week before I was in Austin running a program. This week I was speaking at a conference. So I'm constantly doing 2 things. If I'm not running a program, if I'm not producing an event, if I'm not in some lead position as a show caller or technical director for an event, I'm speaking. And I'm speaking on AI, I'm speaking on production, I'm speaking on technology. So there's always travel involved. And the good thing is I do have the infrastructure. I have a very supportive spouse to support all of that, and to be able to be in all these places. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's that. And then of course, on top of that, I'm also a competitive bodybuilder, and that's not just a side hobby. That is actually a framework that I build around everything that I do to build enough energy and capacity to do all of those things. And I've been competing in bodybuilding shows for the last about 4 years now. I've been training for about 6. And what bodybuilding taught me is the discipline, the structure, delayed gratification, precision, personal accountability at a level that most people never experience. Because in bodybuilding, there's no hiding, there's no shortcuts, there's no excuses. Your results are very public, right? Like when you show up on stage, you show up with what you built. Everybody's there to critique that. And even though your effort is private, a lot of what the outcome of that effort is very public. So that type of philosophy is what I have actually embedded into how I build my business, how I lead teams, how I approach performance. And that's how I also built this side of the business, which is Fit for Events, which is a framework for business performance. And of course, it has wellness and leadership for high-performing professionals embedded into it. It's not yoga and candles. It's physical, it's mental, emotional conditioning for people who operate under pressure, because I know personally what burnout looks like. I also know what depletion looks like. And I know that most leaders are running on fumes and they're calling it commitment, because I've done that too, right? And then of course, on top of that, we layer AI. because I didn't move into AI because it was trendy. I moved into AI because I needed support. I needed
Yeah.
to be more efficient. If you know, at the point where, like, yes, I have a team, yes, I have assistants, but I'm doing so much that I need someone to be able to take a lot of the weight of the menial task, the things that just eat so much time. And in production, in the event production, I feel like that's one of the most operationally brutal environments that you can be in, because you work with a lot of vendors, a lot of partners, you work with clients, you have to please the audience, right? There's compressed timelines, there's zero tolerance for failure, because when you fail, again, it's very, very public, and there's always some type of constant decision load. And there's so many variables everywhere. So when I saw what AI and automation could do for the workflow design, for the task orchestration, for communication, for decision support, that's when I jumped in, all in. And yeah, so that turned me to be a lead voice in AI in events. Because events are very relationship driven, they're also very much legacy heavy and resistant to change. So you can have this polar opposite reaction where AI is needed, but it's also misunderstood, it's feared, and many times it's also oversold. So I tend to live in the middle. I'm bringing the high touch human experience with the high tech system thinking, and that can be a hard place to be in, right? Because you have to blend those worlds. And the event industry, it is a large industry. It's $1 trillion global industry that touches every sector. Think about events that happen in healthcare, tech, government, finance, education. And in order to be able to leverage AI in all of those places, you really, really need to stay informed. So a lot of my time, actually, in the morning, I wake up at 4 a.m. I stay on top of what the latest changes in AI are, because none of my speaking is repeated. Like, I always deliver a new talk because there's so many changes, there's so much happening in this field, and that takes time and takes, you know, preparation and effort and all of that. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I hope that gives you enough of a glance into
basically, given like the very incredible background, the life that you've lived so far, and kind of and I was in my head, I was like, it's amazing that you still have that same drive that you had 20 years ago when you started, all the way to who you are now. What was the thing that kind of kept you going? Like, I can imagine at that time in your life, there wasn't really another woman in the field that you can look up to. You were kind of discouraged by a lot of different people, but you still found a way. You still found a way to show up and be able to be where you are now. What was kind of that first drive for you, that kind of, before you kind of found your community, before you found your people, especially going through a burnout? What was that kind of path and motivation for you?
You know, I never struggled with self-motivation. I've always, I guess, been a very driven person, and that has always helped. And that drive has poured in different direction. And in my early days, I guess I could say that a lot of that drive was also lost in maybe the wrong direction, right? Because you can certainly go hard in one direction and realize that it might not lead to where you either expected it to lead, or it doesn't lead towards the future goal that you set for yourself. And I think because life is so unpredictable, it's good to set milestones. I always set milestones for myself, but I was never also the person to be looking at, okay, in 5 years, I want to be this, or in 10 years, I want to do that, right? I like to take life in increments and be flexible enough to acknowledge that, one, my growth, my very much impact the initial decision or goal that I've made for myself. So something that I thought was going to be what I wanted to do might no longer serve me because I am over past that. Like a quick example there is in my early production career, as I was working fashion shows and concerts and a lot of live events, I was seeing myself in the next few years working in touring, like touring with the band and being on tour all the time. And it was kind of like I was thinking that in about 2 years' time, I would be able to do that, right? Based on where I was in my knowledge base, in my connections, in the path that I was seeing for myself. But then as I was growing more and more and realizing that I have other skills that I could leverage and apply to this one space that I was growing more into, that no longer served my career path. And as I was doing a different analysis on that dream, I realized that that's not really serving me. I don't want to be gone on touring. I don't want to be in that environment. I don't want to pour my life into that direction and be growing in that field. So instead, I pulled myself back and invested in other things that were more relevant to the near future. And that's where, this sort of like, I guess, constant reassessment of where you are is necessary, because you might have a dream, right? Like my dream when I was 12 was to see the Statue of Liberty. I had this postcard of the Statue of Liberty that before I knew what a vision board was, I glued it on my mirror and I was looking at it every single day. I don't even know where I got that postcard from, but I had it. And I moved to US, and when I first flew into JFK, I remember seeing it through the clouds, but because my destination was LA, I just made a quick connection and I never actually got to stop and see. It took 22 years for me to go back and really see it and visit it and go on Ellis Island and, take the selfie and have that experience. That is what delayed gratification looks like. Not that I didn't have the opportunity, but because it was a goal that I still had, but it was not a pressing goal that I was working towards. I knew that eventually I would, and working in events, you always get so close to a destination, right? Like I remember working in Washington, D.C., working in Boston, working in Philadelphia, super close to New York, right? But I never actually got to go to New York, even from like 50 miles away, 60 miles away, because I was always on to the next event. I was always like, okay, we're done here, we're moving on to the next thing. And life can really take you on those cycles where you just go. So when I finally made that intentional decision to go to New York, it was only last year in June, and I got to see it, I got to experience it. And that was a really like a very fulfilling feeling to be able to say, I have finally achieved that one goal, that one dream. I finally, was able to achieve it. But again, it goes back to how life takes you on those curves and you have to be flexible enough to go with those detours, but not lose sight of where you want to go incrementally. For me, I always wanted to establish myself as a voice in the event industry, as a thought leader, as an expert. And that was going to be either in AV production, that was going to be in technology, but it ended up being in AI. Not that I'm not an expert in AV production, but I also feel like it's not necessarily that one strong passion that it used to be for many, many years, because I'm moving with my growth, and my growth is taking me into this new territory, which now is, the future of events is in AI. Yes, AV production will always be the bone, the basically foundation of an event, but it's not the place where you establish thought leadership. It's going to be the same framework, the same process. Yes, we're going to elevate it with AI, with technology, with different tools, all of that. But really, at the end of the day, there isn't much more you can do there, right? So that's why my growth sort of pushed me beyond that, and I just followed that. So your question, I don't know how to answer necessarily a question, what happens if you don't have motivation? Because I never relied on motivation alone. I always relied on discipline and commitment to myself. Same with my bodybuilding journey. There's days when I just straight up don't feel like going into the gym, like today, right? Like it's I've traveled the whole day yesterday coming home. I got very little sleep. I came in past midnight. I woke up early in the morning because I have all these things to do, and my brain is telling me like I'm tired, like I would like to skip gym today, but I did make a commitment to myself to work out 7 days a week. I have 1 day of full recovery, but it's not today. So I will go in, do my thing. The hardest thing I think is to keep the promises you made to yourself and really treat them with the same respect as you would to someone else. If I made an appointment with you, Leanne, and if I didn't show up to the appointment, I would break a promise I made to yourself, right? How many times we break promises we make to our own selves because we think that's okay. It's not okay to break it to someone you work with, but it's okay to break it to yourself. And that's something that I don't have any tolerance for.
Got it. And again, very beautifully said. And I love the multiple things that you said there. One was the you always check on yourself for like if the goal still aligns or not, or if you're going through with decisions that doesn't align with who you are at that moment anymore, because that goal was made by the you 3 years ago. And I also love the I'm not sure if you've seen basically at the time of the recording the Tony Robbins and Alex Ramosi episode that came out I think like 3 days ago now. Where they were talking about just this of like the definition between being pushed and pulled towards something. So you can keep pushing yourself, which is essentially what motivation is. Yeah. But it's always different when you're being pulled towards something, being pulled towards your bodybuilding goals, being pulled towards where you want to be and who you're creating. And like on the business side,
I haven't seen that episode. But I want to add something to that. I think there's also, I guess, that element. You're very correct to say that there is a pull sometimes, because I felt that in my life a few times. And there was this strong pull that takes you into one direction. I felt that about 3 times in my life that really changed the trajectory of where I was going. One of those times was like when I left my, sort of like a famous radio career. I was famous in Romania, like in this position that not many get the opportunity to be in. My mom was getting like those sack fulls of letters from fans. Wow. I think she still has them somewhere like in her attic. So I, from that like perspective, from those optics, you could say like, what more would you want? Like you're successful, like you're already successful as a high schooler and then college graduate, right? But I had this strong pull, like there was something more, and that pull was towards, I need to go in this direction. This is where my passion lies, and I need to follow it. And that's one thing that's actually been a bit of a, like the red line through my life, if you were to follow it, is I followed, my instinct to drive me in the direction that I knew that if I followed the passion, if I followed that instinct, it wouldn't feel like effort. It wouldn't feel like work. You wouldn't, like there's that saying that says, if you do what you love, it doesn't feel like you work one day in your life, right? And I've tried to do things out of necessity, saying, okay, I really need to do this one thing because it has to serve this one purpose. And it was so hard to make myself to do that. That's what I think it's hard for people to do something they have no passion for, they have no attraction to. Yes, in the moment sounds like a good idea, but is that where your heart is? And I've learned for myself, I have to follow my heart, I have to follow my instincts, because otherwise it's just gonna feel like I'm putting additional effort, and that's not effective long term. It's not sustainable.
Very, very true. I love how clear you are on like, which makes sense given your background, but the way that you're just very clear with how you speak and how you see things. Because for a lot of people, like they just don't have that opportunity to be able to flesh out like how they think, how they map things out with the decisions they've made in life. And with you kind of switching into like the path of like starting your own business, like on and now like you still have all of these, you're still flying around, you're still like hands on deck within your business. What does that actually look like for you on like the day to day, like since you started your business? What is kind of your, I always like asking like what's your favorite part of your business, like what is your favorite part of what it is that you do?
I think the biggest thing for me, and the reason why I'm still in this side of my production agency, which does produce events, is I do love to work with the clients to understand their vision and then put it into motion. I love to be able to get sort of like, you get a bit of a high when you walk into an empty ballroom, an empty space, and there's nothing, but then you create something out of nothing. And at the end of the event, at the end of the conference, at the end of whatever trade show, whatever you're doing, to have people come to you and say that it was so much better than what they themselves imagined it. And that's where I think you have that, kind of like a bit of a adrenaline rush of like, oh my gosh, we've done it again. Because you're only as good as your last event. That's the thing with events. It really keeps you on your tiptoes. You don't repeat the same formulas because you don't work with the same people. Yes, you do year to year, right? Like you could work with the same client again and again, but there's always going to be a different vision, a different outcome, a different audience. And that's kind of like, that there's a high that comes with that. There is this accomplishment that you get. And for me, that is easy. That's comfortable. And I love being in that space. And I think that's why I still keep it, because it feeds a lot of my other enterprises, because it's something that I've done for many years. I'm very comfortable in that place, in that space. And it keeps me also very in tune with how technology moves, with how production moves. So I will put myself in a hands-on lead role. May that be, leading the team as a technical director or a sound engineer or a video producer or a show caller, because I want to see what's the latest, what's the greatest. And while I'm not like a full-time tech in that in that area, it keeps me up to date with everything that's happening. And the same thing with AI. Like I really do put a lot of time and effort to be up to date.
Well, I can imagine that with the type of business that you have, it is important to be basically boots on the ground. Like you're there because then things can shift so fast. Like the next, evolution of like this tool or this technology could come out while the event could be happening at the same time. And I agree with a lot of what you said there, where events is still going to be a thing, even during like, of course, like in the heights of like the lockdowns and everything else, people still look forward to even just the webinars, even just a live like mini studio, a little bit of camera. People still need that connection, basically, of like being able to share either the things that they've learned or their own stories. And I love what you also said of like, you love the part where you can bring a vision to life. Like as someone, like I love speaking on stages myself. And I always look at the people who are working behind the scenes, like the volunteers, the people who are doing a lot of the really amazing work. And like I volunteered myself, so I can also see a lot of that behind the scenes, because it's not easy. It's not easy to like think of like, okay, we want to create like this kind of event. We want to make sure that we give this kind of value to people. And for you, like I can see very clearly your love for it, your passion for it. And especially as someone who, you still have this discipline to show up at the gym afterwards, even on a very long and hard day, you're still able to have that back and forth of like, okay, this is me in flow, like this is me living in that flow. What are the things then that kind of take you out of that flow? Like what are the things that might not be as easy as everything else?
Well, there's always going to be the schedule, a very, very busy schedule of running events. For example, you run an event and you travel on site to a place, and those event days, especially as you're loading in, as you're setting up the event, can be very long days. That can be anywhere from 12 hours to, I've even worked 18-hour days. Now, when you go through such long schedules, that is a huge, hard friction day to now try to put in anything else. And there was times when I had to be okay with not working out that day because I've already had such a long day. I've been on site. There's been a lot of moving elements and I had to be there, right? If I don't have to personally be present, I already delegated my team and they're already doing, I can take a couple of hours in the middle of the day. I go get my workout and I come back. Because for me, workouts are not just, oh yeah, I have to keep myself fit and look good. It's more of a energy production machine.